I'd spent my career in startups all outside of Michigan because I didn't know that people could or were doing it here. When I came back to see that the state had been supporting startups in this way for 20 years already, and then to see the outcome of that, where Michigan is the #1 fastest growing state for venture capital, and now in 2024, the #1 state in the Midwest for startups raising venture capital. It's because of this support.
The dollars that we are putting into these programs kind of mentioned here today are coming directly from the state, and they are set to recycle in a great way. So every success would just feed the next generation.
PitchMI is it's a startup pitch competition to find some of the best early stage companies that are being built right here in our state. It's a $2 million pitch competition. It's one of the largest in the country, if not the world. And it's been just phenomenal because we get to see the great companies that are being built in our state across a variety of different industries.
Michigan is so much more, and not to minimize the automotive industry at all, but so much more than automotive. And I think this is a nice opportunity for you to highlight some of those other technologies.
And I think Michigan is in a real sweet spot, certainly, because we're able to double down on mobility, EV technology, advanced manufacturing, our strengths. And we certainly saw that with PitchMI and the companies that came through. And we know that education and workforce development are certainly aligned with a lot of our innovation economy, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's a finalist in that, specifically in 2026.
I think there's been a huge trend toward people building great companies out of universities, and they're capitalizing on that. And I love that. When I see someone's resume that says that they tried to start a thing in college, in high school, unbelievable. That I want to hire that person immediately, right? So when you go and you try, you're going to be successful. Like it's just the natural end result. So please do. Don't let fear of failure stop you from giving it a go.
It's Matt Kirchner on the Tech Ed Podcast. Welcome to this week's episode. Here behind the scenes at the Tech Ed Podcast, we call it going down the PE or VC rabbit hole. And our producer, Melissa Martin, knows exactly what I'm talking about. And that is anytime a guest brings up a capital model, a cap table, a private equity example, a VC example, that's where the rest of the episode is going to go because I am absolutely fascinated by all that stuff. Well, this week, guess what? We get to do a whole episode on that rabbit hole, and we're going to do it in a really, really fascinating way. We talk to tech entrepreneurs on this podcast all the time. We talk to people doing amazing things in technology. Don't talk quite as often about where all this funding comes from. I'm somebody who's been involved in manufacturing and tech for 30 years. I know firsthand exactly what it means to capitalize a business, to understand risk, to understand payback models, to understand return on investment. We're going to talk about all this with two awesome guests, and this is going to be a lot of fun. My guests this week, by the way, are Pete Martin, and Pete is the Director of Portfolio Management at the MSU Research Foundation, and Pete is joined by Alison Todak, who is the Vice President of Entrepreneurship and Innovation at the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, better known to many, especially in Michigan, as the MEDC. Alison, I'll start by welcoming you. Great to have you on.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matt. Happy to be here.
And Pete, to you as well. Really looking forward to the conversation.
Oh man, pleasure to be here.
I guess we're going to start with this, just a little bit about the work that the two of you are doing together, and maybe Alison, you can kick us off on that, and how is the MEDC interacting with the MSU Research Foundation, and what's the goal of all this?
Absolutely. Here in Michigan, here in the Midwest holistically, we certainly see a lot less capital access programs, funds, venture firms stood up in this region. And to help accelerate some of that early stage capital gap, we, the state at MEDC, have chosen key partners to help us deliver some great solutions. And Michigan State University Research Foundation is certainly one of those key partners on several programs.
Awesome. So you're working together to drive innovation, to drive funding across the state of Michigan. And you're exactly right here. And I spent my entire career in the Midwest. It's not like being in Silicon Valley. It's not like being in places like Austin or the Research Triangle or so on, where you've got, tremendous amounts of access to capital. In this case, there's a lot of really kind of fledgling opportunities, a lot of budding opportunities to tap into VC. And that's what we want to get into in this particular episode. And I promise, by the way, to our audience, if you're not one of those finance geeks like I can be sometimes, we're going to make this really, really interesting to a wide array of folks. To that point, Alison, and let's start here. What's interesting to me, just kind of right out of the blocks, I'm used to private venture capital, where you've got a venture capital fund that's raising money from limited partners, pulling that capital together, making bets on early stage businesses in the tech, in my case, in the tech sector. You can do it in a number of different sectors. Most of that money, in my experience, coming from private investors. In this case, you've got public money involved in this model. So talk about that. What is driving some of this interest toward government being a direct investor in the VC model?
Our companies are starting off kind of in a little bit of a capital vacuum. There certainly are great private funds here, and we're hoping that our dollars help catalyze that and encourage that cross collaboration. So we, as the MEDC through the state of Michigan, have stepped up to help fill that earliest stage kind of capital gap in the pre-seed and seed funding, where we're working with our great partners, these nonprofit venture funds, who are helping us get the best companies selected on the earliest stage, de-risking that opportunity for many private venture capitalists on, with the first bet, the first check-in to help get them scaled.
And is that part of the thesis here? Is that if you're really, really, pre-seed early stage business models where, getting a traditional VC interested, it's obviously a risk reward kind of a model. Are you addressing a market there that maybe the private VCs aren't addressing in terms of the stages in which you're investing in these companies, or how would you differentiate those two?
There certainly is a large capital gap at the earliest stages, and we're just helping get that in the hands of founders a little bit sooner than they might if they had to go out to the coast to raise. And we're really hoping that we're getting them their first footing in growing the company.
Yeah, I'll add to this because I'd spent my career in startups all outside of Michigan because I didn't know that people could or were doing it here. When I came back to see that that the state had been supporting startups in this way for 20 years already, and then to see the outcome of that, where Michigan is the number one fastest growing state for venture capital and the number one state in the Midwest for startups raising venture capital, it's because of this support. It's because of the support that the state puts behind early stage startups that might not have been noticed by coastal VCs otherwise. It was just, it's access. It's a big access problem. So by giving them a step up, and maybe more than anybody, the grit and the capacity of a founder in the Midwest compared to anybody else in the world is phenomenal, right? We're just happy to take bets on these folks. So by giving them a little bit of capital, you can then watch them shine, and now we're seeing the results of that 20 years later. It's been a long road, but goodness, it's phenomenal to see what's going on here now.
Well, and I think, when companies come from outside the Midwest and they invest here and they set up, whether it's manufacturing plants where I spend a lot of time, or set up new business in the pharma space, in the tech space, they're fascinated and amazed at the work ethic in the Midwest. That's not just a cliche. You're exactly right. We've got gritty founders. We've got people that are willing to dig deep. Not that you don't have those in other parts of the country, but there is an endemic work ethic. I think in many cases owing to our manufacturing background and agricultural background here in the Midwest, where, folks' grandparents and great-grandparents just kind of grew up figuring out a way to get things done, not saying no, not saying that any hurdle was too high. And so there is that grit that you mentioned, Pete, and that's a real thing. So you were a startup guy for a long time in other parts of the country. Where else did you live, and where were you working?
Yeah. So grew up in Michigan, went to school at MSU.
Yeah.
Bailed on Michigan the first chance that I got because I felt that I needed to do that in order to go chase opportunity. This is 2011, early 2011.
Yeah.
Lived in New York for a bit, then Chicago for about 7 years. Started a data security company in Chicago, moved down to Florida when we raised our Series A, moved to Austin when we raised our Series B, moved back to Michigan just in 2022.
Got it. Awesome. So you're somebody that sees both sides of this, right? Both as a founder and understands all the challenges that beset, especially, it's one thing to run an existing business, and not that is easy, but there's a whole separate, you've got all the same challenges in an existing company that you do in an early stage business, along with all the challenges related to, setting up new business, hiring brand new employees, not, all this doubt about whether the business model is, even going to work. And that's not something that you mention at 9 a.m. when you're meeting with the banker, but it's the kind of thing that sneaks into your head at 3 a.m. when you wake up and can't fall back asleep. So you live that life and know firsthand what this is like. And your example of Michigan and the incredible growth in VC and the incredible opportunities for your new businesses there. Obviously, this is having an incredible impact. Alison, do we see this in other parts of the country, or is this something that's unique to Michigan?
Yeah, absolutely. We are seeing some of this in other great states here, a national movement around public venture models. Indiana has Elevate Ventures, Illinois has done the Invent Fund, and North Carolina has NC Invest. But I think what's really unique about Michigan is the collaboration across institutions. We'll get into PitchMI here a little bit further, but
Yeah.
that brings together, great private foundations, nonprofits, private sectors, and the state government to kind of coalesce around getting innovation and talent rooted here in our state.
And the investments that you're making, are those, is that capital coming specifically from the state, or is that coming from other investors as well?
Absolutely. The dollars that we are putting into these programs kind of mentioned here today are coming directly from the state. We have seen, and they are set to recycle in a great way. So every success would just feed the next generation.
Got it. And Alison is an expert at piquing our interest. She already mentioned PitchMI, and that's where I want to go with the next set of questions here, Pete. And by the way, I love the spelling. You think about a founder pitching a business to a potential VC investor. That's common parlance in the world of VC. But this is PitchMI, but it's all one word, and it's PITCHMI. And we know where the MI comes from. So very creative use of that particular term. But what is PitchMI?
Yeah, so PitchMI is it's a startup pitch competition to find some of the best early stage companies that are being built right here in our state. It's a $2 million pitch competition. It's one of the largest in the country, if not the world. And it is, so we did the first 4 events this fall. We have 4 finalists. They have each won $250,000 or more in investment, and they're going to be meeting again in April of 2026. So just in a few months now, where they'll be competing against each other for a $1 million grand prize. And it's just phenomenal because we get to see the great companies that are being built in our state across a variety of different industries. We picked a handful of different industries that Michigan has some really core competitive strengths in. So mobility, of course, right? We're the best in the world at mobility, right? And now the future of mobility when we're looking at drones and aerospace and everything going on there, but also advanced manufacturing and defense is a $30 billion industry in Michigan. Outdoor innovation. I don't know if people know, Michigan invented the snowboard. It's super cool.
Awesome.
Clean tech. We're the number 1 state in the country for clean tech jobs since the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act, healthcare, and of course, software and AI, right? We've had multiple unicorn companies in software and now just seeing a ton in AI. And before, I just don't want to lose this point on healthcare, because I didn't know this until I came back to Michigan. Michigan invented the flu vaccine, right?
Wow.
We invented the whooping cough vaccine, and there's a lot of history across a ton of different industries in our state, and so we're able to highlight all of these things with this pitch competition and show the strength of a founder that's building in the Midwest, that's building in our state, and put that on a national stage so that investors from around the country look here too.
Yeah, and I think, when people from outside of the Midwest and outside of the state of Michigan, and, in my particular case, I was tier 1 to automotive suppliers for years and years in my days of manufacturing. I think a lot of people think about Michigan as, you say mobility and historically, the automotive industry. And obviously that industry is alive and well. And as it evolves toward mobility, e-mobility, toward EV, we've been really involved in a number of initiatives with Drew Coleman and Mish Auto doing some really, really cool things in that space. But Michigan is so much more, and not to minimize the automotive industry at all, but so much more than automotive. And I think this is a nice opportunity for you to highlight some of those other technologies and some of those other businesses, not just in terms of the history of something like a snowboard or a flu vaccine, but some of that ongoing innovation that I know you're helping to fund, which is really, really cool. So who gets to pick the winners in these, in this example, the $250,000 a piece? Is that just Pete Martin saying, hey, I like this, or who gets to decide?
No. We had 4 pitch competitions in 4 different cities across Michigan. They were all industry-specific pitch competitions open to startups that are headquartered in Michigan. Or if somebody wants to move to Michigan and then apply for this pitch competition, you're more than welcome to do so. But you got to be here. You have to be building here.
Yep.
So we went to 4 different cities. We did it all in 1 week. It was crazy, but it was awesome. And we had a panel of 4 judges from VCs from across our state. And so it was these folks, right? Experts that understand what it takes to build a high growth company in these industries. They picked the winners of these pitch competitions. They are now all portfolio companies of ours. And in
Awesome.
this championship in April, we will have phenomenal judges. I can't name them yet, but they are from around the country.
Yeah.
They're going to be coming to our state. And yeah, it's just super exciting.
And what are you looking for? So if you've got a panel of folks, I mean, do you give them a rubric? Do you say, hey, these are the kinds of things that we're really focusing on in terms of what types of companies we want to invest in? What are the criteria there?
Yeah. So these are all early stage companies, right? Pre-seed companies. They might have revenue. They don't have to have revenue. But so they're all early stage. So the biggest thing that we're looking for is the founding team, right? And is this team the right team to be building in the space? The judges do have a rubric. So it's team, it's go-to-market, it's their execution capability, it's the feasibility, it's the overall market size. It's all of the things that an investor should be looking for when they're looking at a potential investment. But by far the most important is this team and their capability to draw in the right people, to distribute their product, to get it out there. And to go and execute on this idea.
And I think that's a really important message for our audience, and especially anybody who's interested in entrepreneurship to hear. You and I agree 100%, right? You can have the best business model, you can have the best capitalization, you can have the best product. If you don't have the best people, then that's not something that you're probably going to want to invest in, because everything in business always comes back to the people. So you mentioned picking these companies, placing these investments. What is the form of that? Is that an equity position you're taking in that business, or how does that work? And is it always the same, or is it different for every deal?
Yes, sir. It's an equity position. So think of like a SAFE or a convertible note or a priced round if somebody's raising a priced round. It has been, we'll say we were flexible this fall, and like how we were trying to get it accomplished really quickly. So we're flexible in how we did that for each startup based on what they were doing. If they were already raising a round, we were just trying to come in on what they were already doing. And then going forward, it's going to be just much more standard. We'll just do a SAFE. It'll be a 20% discount. We're just trying to be really, really straightforward with what we're doing for these founders. So it's an equal playing field for everybody.
And at what point are you exiting? I mean, are they paying that debt off as they grow the business, or are you hanging on to that equity for a period of time?
I don't want them paying off debt to me, right, and earning 6%. No, thank you. What we're trying to do is get great equity positions in these companies, have them build $100 million, $1 billion, $10 billion companies, and then exit those companies and pay us back then, which will return orders of magnitude what we invested, so that we can put that pay that forward to more companies here in Michigan.
Yeah, awesome. And so I wanted to ask that question in the way that I did to give you an easy answer, because I figured that might be the answer to that particular question. And then you answered my follow-on a little bit as well. So I'm accustomed to working around historically revolving loan funds, where you might have a municipality that sets up a revolving loan fund where they're investing in new development in that municipality. That money gets paid off over the course of time, comes back into the revolving loan fund, and then gets placed again in a similar organization. And the idea is that you're building this basically collection of capital over the course of time that you can use to invest in that case in local industry. So you're doing the same thing. So as your company, you put $250,000 in, this becomes $1 billion company. You're exiting at a valuation of whatever. Are you pulling that money back into your fund then to put it to work again? Is that the idea?
Well, I guess to explain the whole organization. So the MSU Research Foundation, we are by far the most active investor in Michigan, one of the most active in the Midwest. We have multiple families of funds. So we have some funds that we have capitalized ourselves through MSU Research Foundation. Those, we treat basically as evergreen. We'll just keep investing those dollars. We have with Michigan Rise as a subsidiary of the MSU Research Foundation. Those dollars are invested with the MEDC. So some of that goes back to the MEDC. Some of that we continue to invest in companies. And then we have private funds. We just launched a fund with MSU, the Michigan State University, and Henry Ford Health to invest more directly in healthcare. And so that'll be treated more like a private fund. So multiple different options. And then with PitchMI, that was a grant that we received through the MEDC. And but we're also putting up additional dollars from our side because we felt it was really important to increase the size of the prize to the founders and make this a legitimate top tier pitch competition across the country. And so the MEDC grant dollars will be returned to the MEDC, and the rest of it will keep investing in companies across our state.
And what's unique about this specific grant that we were able to assign to the MSU Research Foundation came from a much larger statewide coalition of a $60 million fund that also put money into 8 different evergreen evergreen nonprofit venture funds across our state. That
Cool.
top line dollar was $60 million coming from our legislative body to get programs and opportunities for founders going in our state, which was the biggest investment in 20 years, which was great.
Huge.
Yeah, that's awesome. So for our producer, Melissa, we just heard a term called evergreen, and that's a whole separate rabbit hole because I love evergreen funds. We won't go into that one here on this particular episode of the podcast, but love that model as well. Let's stick on PitchMI, Pete, and talk about, you mentioned a couple of the key partners already. You talk about some of your panelists, any that are helping to pick the companies here. Any specific organizations, relationships that you want to highlight for our audience?
Yeah, well, the Michigan Economic Development Corporation is the sole reason that we're able to do this. So super thankful and grateful for that.
Awesome.
In addition, quite literally, this pitch competition we were able to pull this off in about 40 days,
Wow.
whatever it was. It was a super short amount of time because we had organizations from across the state all chip in. Right, we gave founders 2 weeks to apply. We got 375 applications. Right, we had teams of people reviewing because we had 4 different cities that we were going to. We had teams of people reviewing the applications. They were coming from Michigan has 21 smart zones, basically economic development organizations around the state. They were coming from all of those smart zones. They were coming from every organization that you can think of that touches startups in any way, wanted to get involved with this because they all see it for what it is. It's a chance to put a really big spotlight on our state and the founders building in our states. And we all feel very confidently that when we do that, anyone that looks at this competition is going to say, my goodness, that's amazing. These companies are amazing, right? So it's going to be a big win for the whole state. And so we had everybody chip in. And then we also had the private sector chip in too. We had venture capital firms that wanted to be judges, right? That were willing to be judges. We had folks at the city level. We had mayors of cities record videos to share with our founders, which is super cool. And then we had folks come in to co-invest with us as well.
Got it. Well, you think about, there's these 4 companies that basically rose to the top, but think about the other 375 or 371, I guess, all the experience they get, right? To think through their business model, to put together this application, to even be considered. How many get to, in each of those 4 cities, how many are actually pitching the panel?
We had 5 per city, so 20 companies pitched, and all we know, and we'll come up with stats that we'll have, not come up with them. We will have stats by the time we get to April. But we already know multiple of those companies that pitched and didn't win have already received investment. They've already been hiring people in Michigan. Like, great things happened for them because of this pitch competition. The fact that, gosh, in our partnership with the MEDC and with some great PR organizations around the state, we reached 3 million people just in our region, right? From the amount of times that we were on TV, that these founders were on TV. We reached over 100 million people across the country with some articles that the MEDC helped promote and put out there. I mean, it was just incredible.
Yeah, well, and now you're on the Tech Ed podcast, so think about how much exposure you're going to get now. I mean, it just keeps getting better, which is amazing.
Listen, I see you guys going viral just recently, so it's pretty cool.
Absolutely, it happens from time to time, in spite of the host. But but your point that you've got VC, private VC funds that are coming and participating, and obviously, I mean, they're altruistic and they want to better the state of Michigan. They're also self-interested and saying, hey, there's these 4 companies that are going to rise to the top, but look at all these other great companies that we get to take a look at. And maybe there's for investment philosophy or market space or whatever that they have an interest in. That's part of the thesis too, right? Is you're giving these 375 companies in this case, or founders, exposure to not just yourself, but others, right?
Exactly right. So to call them out because they should be called out because they took a bet like we did. Corewell Health Ventures in Grand Rapids came in. They supported with an extra $75,000.
Wow.
eLab Ventures in Ann Arbor with another $125,000 to that winner. They invest in AI-specific companies. Corewell, obviously, in healthcare-specific companies. And then Assembly Ventures, one of the premier mobility investors, and now advanced manufacturing and defense, like all of these areas, one of the premier in the world, invested an extra $125,000 in Detroit. And they all said the same thing, right? Which is, this seed capital is not enough, right? It's not enough to just say, hey, we're going to provide a little bit of seed capital. The private sector has to come in too. And so by doing that now, by putting their money where their mouths are, they're supporting this entire economy in the state. And it's adding validation behind these founders too. It's perfect.
And to somebody in a $1 billion company, that might not seem like a lot of money, but to a founder in a small business, even
Yeah.
10, 20, $30,000 can be an absolute lifeline to your future, and really give you that. And part of it's the capital. The other part of it is knowing that somebody loves your idea enough to actually invest in it and to get behind you. And that boost in confidence is incredibly, incredibly valuable, regardless of what market space you're in, Allison. And I know Pete has mentioned a number of them, but as you look at, and I know our audience is going to be particularly interested in this as well. As you look at some of those emerging technologies, everybody's brain always goes right to AI, and obviously that's super, super hot. But what are some of those areas where we should be thinking about? These are the market sectors that for the next 5-10 years are going to be super, super hot, and that we should be considering.
Absolutely. And I think Michigan is in a real sweet spot, certainly, because we're able to double down on the legacy sectors that Pete alluded to earlier, which is like mobility, EV technology, advanced manufacturing, our strengths.
Right?
And we certainly saw that with PitchMI and the companies that came through. But then we're also like, again, yeah, focused intentionally on diversifying our economy and really supporting founders in these new waves of clean energy. I would say, yeah, certainly AI, software, healthcare. Those are all like, careers and companies of the future. And we're really excited to be able to support those in our state.
Yeah, it's so much fun to see those technologies emerging, and in my case, you just see so much crossover between different market sectors now, different technologies, different opportunities. Obviously, with AI kind of weaving itself through every single one of them, but super, super exciting opportunity for any emerging technology and any emerging company that's doing business in association with those particular technologies. Specific to that, Allison, you've got these 4 companies that rose to the top. Would love to hear a little bit more about them, and then also being the Tech Ed podcast, we always geek out a little bit on education technology as well. So tell us about these great companies that you're supporting now, and also a little bit on what you see going on in the ed tech space.
Absolutely. No, I'll certainly invite Pete to jump in on this one with me since he works directly with them as their primary investor. But a few great examples. We had General Orbit kind of win our advanced manufacturing, defense tech, and mobility category. They're developing navigation hardware and software for satellites.
Wow.
Ben Connect, our winner out of Grand Rapids, is like smarter hospital discharging systems for patients into like the secondary care space. And Electric Outdoors is one of them, a great Michigan spotlight company. They're rethinking clean energy for outdoor living. It's been a really fun company to watch grow and scale. While we haven't seen out of an ed tech company out of these first 4, we're just getting started, which is great. Like we're going to have our finals in April, and then we're turning around and doing this all again next year, which is really exciting. And we know that education and workforce development are certainly aligned with a lot of our innovation economy, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's a finalist in that specifically in 2026.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention that MSU is the best education school in the country, and we have lots of portfolio companies that work with our educators, faculty members. We also have an accelerator that we partner with Michigan Virtual on, and there's one startup to know that competed. They didn't win, but they're phenomenal, and we have since brought them into our portfolio. It's Maca. Maca is they're doing educational content for kids. So imagine you have kids, you put them on YouTube or YouTube Kids, and they watch CoComelon, which personally not the biggest fan of CoComelon. They have educator certified content that they're able to deliver to kids at scale across the country. Super cool. A really exciting company. There's lots of really exciting companies that weren't just these top 4. And I think that was the thing that came across most clearly throughout this whole competition, was that all 20 of those companies were phenomenal. There were probably 50 of companies that easily could have competed, that anyone would have looked at and said, my goodness, that's very cool. That founder is the right founder to be building what they're building. That's the thing that got us so excited. That was the bet that we were taking, is that we would have enough companies that would be super exciting. We felt really confident in that bet, but it still needed to happen. And man, they really showed out. They did great.
Yeah, it sounds like you got even more companies interested than you thought you might have, which is just exactly what you want to see. So, Allison, you mentioned clean energy for outdoor living. I think I understood the other 3 products. What does that look like? What is that?
Oh gosh, I can't even begin to
I'll
describe
do it.
it.
I'll
Well,
do it.
Okay, Pete,
I love.
Yeah. So Electric Outdoors, Yosef, the founder there, phenomenal, right? So imagine it's a trailer that you can tow out to any place, right? It is solar powered. It's got a water filtration system. It's got EV charging. It's got everything that you need so that you can have your basically glamping experience, but
Got it.
anywhere. And so if you own property and you want to turn that into property with revenue, you can do that. They're also working with disaster recovery efforts. Like there's very, very cool company.
It sounds like a really, really cool company. I love that, and we'll take the time to track down the websites and link all those up in the show notes so people can not Coco Melon, but everything else that we mentioned here in that last conversation. We'll link up in the show notes for this week's episode. Really, really cool tech and really, really cool examples. And I think there's an underlying message there. We have a lot of students that listen to this podcast, a lot of young entrepreneurs or budding entrepreneurs that there is an incredible interest, whether it's education technology or outside of that space, in investing in these new technologies. And it's one of the most exciting times and probably the most opportunistic times for any of those young people that have that entrepreneurial bent. So certainly lots and lots of exciting things kind of held in store for our young listeners and for listeners of all ages, regardless of what you're doing. Let's say after high school, some of you might be going to the military, some of you might be going direct to workforce, some of you might be going to a technical or community college, some of you may be becoming entrepreneurs, some of you may be going to great institutions like Michigan State University. So let's talk about that connection, Pete. Talk about the connection with Michigan State. And I think about we spend a lot of time around tier 1 research institutions in education, in research, in higher education particularly, and seeing all this incredible research that gets funded a variety of different ways. But talk about that aspect of it. Is there opportunity for investment in some of these technologies that are growing out of the research that's being done in our universities? What does that investment look like? How do you protect the IP in a way that's good for the entrepreneur, the investor, and the university as well?
Great question. And there are many people that are more educated on this space within my own organization than I am. But I'll give you the best shot, because it's totally possible. And also, one of the companies that won the PitchMI regional events, General Orbit, is one of those companies. They licensed technology from the University of Michigan, spun it out just this summer, and then have already won. They're now, well over $250,000 on their way to April. So absolutely possible, not just to license technology out of a university, but to license it and then move really quickly, right? And this is a direct example of that. So within MSU, we have a technology transfer office. Lots of universities have technology transfer offices.
Mm-hmm.
They exist to help faculty, postdocs, people that are within the university that are developing IP. They help them commercialize that technology. We at the MSU Research Foundation, we have a whole department within our foundation called Spartan Innovations that works with our tech transfer office to educate faculty members on the commercialization process and on this process of just going down the path of building a high growth startup. Okay, so yeah, absolutely possible. And then they can license that through the tech transfer offices, and that happens in a variety of different ways. But get into the conversations with your tech transfer folks there.
I mean, the state is also seeing that opportunity. We have 4 R1s in our great state of Michigan, 4 research institutions at the best and brightest, and we have purposely put even state programming dollars to help the MSU the Spartan Innovations of the world continue to develop those companies. There's 3 different programs that the state offers to help pair mentors, to help give some early stage translational research dollars to help see if there's a there on the invention that is coming out. And so we certainly see that opportunity in pipeline for creating net new businesses in our state.
I'll give you a fun fact, Matt.
Yeah, love fun facts.
So this organization, the MSU Research Foundation, has been around for about 50 years, right?
Wow. Okay.
Right after it was started by Clifton Wharton, who was the first Black president of a major university in the U.S. And a couple years after they started, they licensed this chemotherapy drug called cisplatin, and it was an absolute home run. Returned. It is the sole reason that the MSU Research Foundation exists in the form that it does today, and it's from just about 50 years ago. Cisplatin is the chemotherapy drug that has saved millions of lives, right? So a health innovation that came out of MSU, and we exist today, and we invest in startups all across Michigan. We're the most active investor in our state today because of that one innovation that came out of our university. It has returned so many millions of dollars to the university, and also built an endowment, and it allows us to do what we do today. And so if you're thinking about if you're somebody thinking about going down this path, if you're a faculty and you have an innovation, you're thinking about going down this path of licensing a technology, just know that the work that you do can have ripple effects that last for decades or beyond. It's unbelievably cool.
Yeah, that's a great story, and to see the benefits that's paying off now here 50 years later, and the vision of an individual that to set the program up in the first place, and then to invest in some technology, and they don't all pay off. That's kind of the VC model or the PE model, but boy, when you get those that do, it's incredible the value that they can carry through, in this case, decade upon decade upon decade. Are there, maybe there aren't any differences if I'm a founder, and by the way, that for our listeners, that's the generic term we use for somebody that's founded an early stage company. If I'm a founder, are there benefits to working with a VC partner that is pulling capital from the state as opposed to private VC, or do they work pretty much the same?
I think there are benefits to both, right? So we do both. Broadly, is the way that we invest, I don't see a difference, right? But it's all about the value that you can get post investment when you're dealing with any investor, angel investor, public backed fund, private fund. Right. So if you go to a private fund, they're going to say, okay, we have networks on the coast. We have these people that we can introduce you to. We can do this stuff. Great. Right. Well, if you go to somebody like us, the MSU Research Foundation, we have a great relationship with the state. Right. We will know about the opportunities available to you for non-dilutive funding, whether that's through the business accelerator funds or the Michigan Business Development Program grants, or all of these other grants that a private fund might not know about, care about, be thinking about at all, right? And they might know about things that we don't know about or care about or think about at all, right? So I would absolutely be looking at multiple different sources of funding, but as a founder, bring people onto your cap table, bring on investors that are going to add a ton of value for you post-investment, not just the capital. The capital is great. You need people that are going to be there for you after they invest, so that they can open doors for you in your industry, in customers, in other investors, whatever it is that they can do.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you add anything to that, Alison?
No, I think that's exactly right. Both are very beneficial to have, and probably have very different viewpoints and insights for you as a founder.
And I think, you both make a great point about, you think about the money, right? And everybody's like, all right, how do I, what's the minimum amount of equity that I have to give up in order to get this money that I need? Fine. Everybody's got to think through that. But the value of who that investor is and what they bring to the table in terms of, and you mentioned relationships and connections and ideas, those kind of things, really, really important. And the other part of it is just getting you through some of those tough times, those, those darkness of doubt moments that you have as a founder, and having, surrounding yourself with people who have seen this, done it themselves in Pete's case, and being able to provide that input as well. I just think that's really, really important. So let's talk now about the broader VC community. And this is one of the things that I think is really, really fascinating that I found in our work in VC, is that, you would think that all of these venture capital funds are competing for the opportunity to invest in the best and brightest, and that it's kind of a cutthroat world, and they're trying to edge each other out and push people out of deals. And what I found, and be interested in your insights, it's kind of exactly the opposite, that it's, I think the VCs recognize too that there's no one size fits all, that you're looking for the best possible relationship. We see VCs in many cases helping each other, making suggestions to each other. Hey, this deal isn't right for us, but it might be right for you. So a question for you, Pete, and then Alison as well. Are you seeing the same thing? And then, what kind of messages is the work that you're doing sending to the broader VC community?
Yeah. So our typical check size is anywhere from 100 to 250K. And so typically when we invest in a company, they're raising 500K minimum to like 1.2 million, something like that.
Yep.
And so we're not going to be the only check in that company. And so it is in our interest to have lots of great relationships with lots of venture capital firms that invest either at the frequency that we do or in different industries, so that we can call on and say, hey, we just met this great founder. You need to know them. Like, let's make the introduction so you guys can come onto this cap table with us. We think this is going to be a great journey. We have to do that. Right. And I would love to get to a point where we can just say, yep, cool, we're going to take that entire round. That's great. I'd love to get competitive. Our whole ecosystem, the whole Midwest is not there today.
Right. For sure. Yeah. And you're mitigating risk that way too. I mean, if you've got a couple different funds that are coming in with smaller investments to make up that $1.2 million, yeah, you're limiting the upside opportunity, but you're mitigating risk at the same time.
Yeah, there's a downside for the founder is they have instead of making one phone call, talking to one VC, getting the check for their whole round. It will never be one phone call,
Right.
but one VC taking the check for their whole round, they have to get lots of different organizations on board. And so that is why it is beholden on us to build great relationships with other investors so that process, when we commit, then we can make a bunch of phone calls on behalf of that founder, make a bunch of warm introductions, and get other people to come in so that they can close their round faster.
For sure. Alison, is your take the same way?
Absolutely. My career before moving over to economic development was in growth equity. So certainly saw it from that piece and how we got our best investments and where we also shepherd them to next in terms of their growth stage. And I'm also a board member of our Michigan Venture Capital Association. And that group is, it's a peer learning group to help each other shepherd along both private and public capital dollars.
So how is this all going to evolve over time, Alison? You see these relationships, and obviously with your background on the equity side as well. What prognosticate a little bit for us? What do the next 10 years look like?
Yeah. I think it's certainly collaboration, not competition, to what we both just alluded to.
Right.
Public capital is going to play that catalytic role, like that really early stage footing, helping fill those gaps and build the regional ecosystem, and then signaling confidence to the private investors too. I think once those ecosystems continue to mature, private VC comes in to scale, will certainly just keep that growth wheel going. In Michigan, we're certainly seeing that already with this, our state back initiative of PitchMI, and then leveraging other private dollars that Pete and the MSU Research Foundation were already able to do.
It'll be so much fun to see how that all rolls out. And we'll by the way, link up the PitchMI resources as well in the show notes. So if people are interested, either because you're a founder, you want to understand the model a little bit, or you want to track some of these investments and opportunities in companies over time, we'll make sure that those resources are available to you as well. Two final questions for our two great guests, Pete Martin and Alison Todak, on the Tech Ed podcast. And they're questions that we ask every single guest here on the Tech Ed podcast. Alison, we'll start with you on the first question. We've all had our own personal education journey. Pete can't stop talking about MSU, so we know what his is. But in your particular case, talk about, is there something that you feel about or think about education that would surprise our audience a little bit?
I think there's equal value on in-classroom work in our great institutions and learning opportunities in the field, as well as paired with that real world learning experience that I think entrepreneurship really is for you. For me personally, that was mentorship and community and hands-on creation that taught me more than probably the classroom did. And I think we're entering an era where experiential learning is certainly what we do in entrepreneurship, and is going to be a really critical skill.
You must have done your homework on the Tech Ed podcast, because that is our reason for existing right there. What you just said, absolutely. Hands-on learning, experiential learning. Frankly, and this is to repeat it a bazillion times, the best and brightest in my case, entrepreneurs, business people, creators, makers, engineers, whatever, are those people with that hands-on, do-it-yourself, learn through experience mindset. And I think my guess is we could probably do a whole separate episode on the founders that you're seeing, and they're not necessarily the straight A students that aced everything all the way through their education journey. Some of them might be, but there's a lot of folks that just found their way into entrepreneurship, maybe the hard way or maybe the regular way. They're not all the same, Pete. So reflect on that for a moment, and then same question to you. What's something from your education journey that would surprise other people?
Well, to validate your point, don't look at my college transcript. It was a rocky road. We ended up fine. But it was a rocky road in the middle.
Exactly.
I think the biggest thing for me, so when I went to school at this great school called Michigan State University.
But you haven't mentioned that. Thanks for bringing that up.
No, really, what?
And my mom was a teacher, by the way. My mom was a high school teacher, and so I just love educators. I've talked to investors that literally have told me, "Show me the son or daughter or of a teacher, and I will bet on them blind." And it's funny to me, but it totally makes sense. Totally makes sense.
For sure.
Anyway, so went to MSU. I took a class at MSU because there was one class on entrepreneurship. And it ignited a spark in me. My parents were entrepreneurs, so I kind of I was leaning that way. But this class was phenomenal. I read Richard Branson's book in this class. This guy's name was Dr. Chicky. He had a bow tie, super cool.
Love it.
And it was the class where I said, this is what I'm going to do. I can't get a regular job. I have to go do something like this. I have to go build something. I know I'm going to do that, right?
That's so awesome.
So that is what sent me down that path. Now, you can minor in entrepreneurship at MSU through this great school called the Burgess Institute. Unbelievably cool. And at U of M, you can minor in entrepreneurship. And at Central Michigan, you can major in entrepreneurship. I think there's been a huge trend toward people building great companies out of universities, and they're capitalizing on that. And I love that.
I just had lunch with one of our former interns a week ago, and he's taking courses, in this case at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, another great Big Ten school, and he was talking about his courses in entrepreneurship and reflecting on some of the things he learned in his internship, and it is just fascinating what we have students learning in those types of programs, and it is, to your point, and believe me, my college transcripts aren't for public discussion either, but I did manage to make it through and do enough work to get to the end game, which was getting into the workforce and actually being able to do some really cool stuff. Not that I didn't do cool stuff at my alma mater, Marquette University, but I just couldn't wait to get out of school and get into the workforce and start putting to work, what lessons I learned both inside and outside the classroom. Okay, Pete. So one more question for the two of you. We'll start with you. We're going to take you back to your 15-year-old self. You're that young man growing up in the state of Michigan. Your mom's a teacher. You've got your whole life ahead of you. If you could go back and give that 15-year-old version to Pete Martin one piece of advice, what would that be?
There were many ideas that I had, entrepreneurial ideas that I had when I was a teenager that I didn't even try to pursue. There were many colleges, including University of Michigan, that I did not even try to apply to because I was very afraid of being told no. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I was super afraid of getting rejected. Who cares? Nobody cares.
Yeah.
Nobody cares. The only thing that you're doing is a disservice to yourself by not trying. So just go and try. The thing that's going to happen is you're going to hopefully learn a ton, and then be able to apply that to the next thing that you do. And I can tell you from experience now, being on the other side, when I see someone's resume that says that they tried to start a thing in college, in high school, unbelievable, that I want to hire that person immediately. Right. So when you go and you try, you're going to be successful. Like it's just the natural end result. So please do. Don't let fear of failure stop you from giving it a go.
Those are the greatest stories when you hear about high school students they come up with a great business idea, and it's not just the lemonade stand, but some like amazing, really cool entrepreneurial idea, and they have the guts to go out and try it and make it happen. And even if that doesn't grow into something bigger, that experience of taking that risk, having that opportunity, super important. So going back to that sophomore in high school, if you've got that great entrepreneurial idea, if you've got that thing that you think you could do better than anybody else, go after it. Make it happen while you're still in high school. You're never too young to be a great entrepreneur, and the whole world is in front of you. So great advice from Pete. And Alison, same question to you. Going back to that 15-year-old Alison, sophomore in high school, what advice would you give yourself?
She certainly was a planner, and I would say you don't have to have it all figured out. I certainly thought, life would go one way, and every opportunity I had to make a decision, make a change, or kind of a pivot, as we use in startup language, every one of those turned into something even greater than I could have possibly imagined. And how that career curve has wound around in circles and or different directions for me has been really beneficial. So I would say absolutely believe in taking a chance on something new.
Absolutely. And for anybody that has ever tried to plan out their whole life, whether we have it perfectly planned or not, it doesn't go quite the way that we expect anyway.
Never.
So take a chance, take that opportunity. Don't be afraid to chase an opportunity down as when one comes your way. And that's a huge difference maker. Speaking of difference makers, the two of you are making a huge difference in the entrepreneurial world, the startup world in the state of Michigan and beyond. Had a really, really good time having this conversation with both Pete Martin, who's the Director of Portfolio Management at the MSU Research Foundation, Alison Todak, Vice President of Entrepreneurship and Innovation at the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. Thanks to both of you for coming on.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Matt.
We're going to link up these show notes, and we had a whole bunch of references. We'll put those at techheadpodcast.com/MSU Research. So techheadpodcast.com, 3 letters MSU, and then the word research. That's where the show notes will be. Check them out there. When you're done there, come find us on social media. You'll find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Wherever you go for social media, you're going to find the Tech Ed Podcast. React to what we're doing. Come say hello. We would love to hear from you. Can't wait to be with our audience again next week on the Tech Ed Podcast. Until then, my name is Matt Kirchner. Thanks for being with us.